I stood at the altar in a silk gown worth more than my biological parents' entire house, looking directly into the lens of the professional camera. I, Clara Sterling, take you, Julian, to be my family. The crowd gasped as the two strangers sitting in the very back row, my biological mother and father, started sobbing uncontrollably. They weren't invited to walk me down the aisle. They weren't even invited to the reception. They were just spectators to a life they had violently thrown away exactly 5 years ago. If you want to know how I replaced my toxic, narcissistic parents with an elite billionaire family and legally erased them from my life forever, you better stay tuned until the very end. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's a story about finding the bloodline you actually deserve. Smash that like button right now and subscribe to the channel.
It all started on a freezing, rain-slicked Tuesday in Seattle, exactly 3 days before Christmas. I was in my tiny, drafty apartment, surrounded by half-packed bags and expensive gifts I had spent months carefully selecting for my family. I had even found a vintage watch for my father and a designer silk scarf for my sister, Harper. I was so excited to finally go home and feel that warmth I had been craving all year. My life as a struggling junior architect was exhausting, and I just wanted to be Clara again, not just another employee. But then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was my mother, Brenda. I picked up with a huge smile, expecting her to ask what time my flight landed at the airport. I didn't know that the next 60 seconds would effectively destroy my entire world and change the course of my destiny forever.
Clara, don't come home this year. Your sister Harper is bringing her new fiancé's family over, and honestly, we just don't want any of your usual drama. Brenda's voice was as cold and sharp as a shard of mountain ice. I froze, my heart dropping into the pit of my stomach. Drama? Mum, I haven't done anything. I've been working 60 hours a week just to afford these plane tickets, I protested, my voice cracking. She let out a long, theatrical sigh that made me feel like an absolute burden. The aesthetic of the holiday needs to be perfect, Clara. Harper's future in-laws are very high society, and you always find a way to make things about yourself. Just stay in Seattle. We'll send you a check for dinner. It's better for everyone this way. Then, without even waiting for me to say goodbye, she hung up. The silence was deafening.
I sat on the floor of my apartment for 3 hours, staring at the Christmas tree I had decorated so hopefully. The twinkling lights felt like a cruel joke. I realized that for 27 years I had been an optional extra in my own family's story. I was the difficult one simply because I had boundaries. I was the dramatic one because I didn't like being ignored. I looked at the gifts for Harper, the girl who was getting the perfect high society Christmas while I was being discarded like yesterday's trash. The pain was a physical weight in my chest, a deep, hollow ache that told me I would never be enough for them. I wasn't a daughter. I was a decoration they decided didn't match the new furniture. I felt so incredibly small, so invisible, and so completely alone in a city that didn't even know my name yet. I felt truly lost.
I tried calling my father, hoping for a voice of reason. He picked up on the third ring, but I could hear the football game roaring in the background. Dad, did Mum tell you? She said I can't come home. There was a long, agonizing pause where all I could hear was the crowd cheering on the TV. Look, Clara, your mother has worked really hard on this dinner. Let's just keep the peace, okay? It's only one Christmas. We'll see you in the spring or something. He didn't even sound sad. He sounded annoyed that I was interrupting his afternoon. That was the moment the last thread of my loyalty snapped. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, was choosing a peaceful dinner over his own child. He was a coward, masking his indifference as compromise. I realized then that I didn't have a family. I had a group of people I shared DNA with.
An hour later, I saw the first Instagram post. It was a photo of my family's fireplace. 6 stockings were hanging beautifully in a row. My mother, my father, Harper, her fiancé, and even his parents. My stocking, the one I'd had since I was 3 years old, was nowhere to be seen. The caption read, "Finally, the perfect family Christmas. No stress, just love and luxury." They hadn't just told me not to come. They had physically erased my existence from the home before the holiday even started. I refreshed the page and saw my cousins and aunts commenting about how beautiful and refined everything looked. Not a single person asked where I was. I was the ghost of Christmases past, officially exorcised for the sake of a better social media aesthetic. If this has ever happened to you, tell me your story in the comments below.
Something inside me shifted. The sadness didn't disappear, but it was suddenly joined by a hot, white-hot spark of absolute defiance. I stood up, wiped my eyes, and grabbed my heavy winter coat. "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. "You want a perfect, high-society Christmas. I'll give you one you'll never forget." I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I wasn't going to spend the night rotting in this apartment. I packed a small bag, grabbed my credit card, and walked out the door. I decided that if I was going to be alone, I was going to be alone in the most expensive, luxurious place in the city. I was done shrinking myself to fit into their narrow, cruel lives. I was going to find a new world, even if I had to break into it myself. The old Clara died that night, and the sterling version was about to be born today.
I drove downtown to the Emerald Hearth, the most exclusive restaurant in Seattle. It was a place where CEOs and old money families gathered to celebrate in private mahogany booths. The snow was starting to fall in thick, heavy flakes as I handed my keys to the valet. The lobby smelled like expensive cedar and expensive perfume. I walked up to the hostess, a woman in a perfectly tailored black dress. "Tailor for one, Keys," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional curiosity. Most people didn't dine alone on Christmas Eve at a place that cost $500 a plate. She led me to a small, intimate table tucked away near the back, right next to a massive roaring fireplace and a towering Christmas tree decorated with real gold leaf. It was beautiful, but it was also a stage for the drama about to unfold tonight.
I ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne on the menu and sat there, watching the families around me. Directly to my left was a table that looked like something out of a movie. There were 10 of them, elegant, loud, and clearly obsessed with each other. They weren't worried about aesthetics. They were laughing so hard the glassware was rattling. An older woman with silver hair and a sharp, kind face was holding court, telling stories that had the younger men doubled over in laughter. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of jealousy. That was supposed to be my life. As the first glass of champagne hit my system, a single traitorous tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. I tried to hide it, looking down at my menu, but I didn't realize that the silver-haired woman had been watching me for the last 20 minutes with an eagle eye. She saw everything. She saw my broken soul.
Suddenly, I felt a gentle, firm hand on my shoulder. I looked up, startled, to see the elegant woman from the large table standing over me. She didn't look like she was pitying me. She looked like she was evaluating a diamond in the rough. "My dear," she said, her voice like velvet and iron. "Nobody should drink champagne that expensive while crying by themselves on Christmas Eve. It's a waste of a good vintage." I tried to stammer an apology, but she just waved it away with a hand dripping in emeralds. "I'm Beatrice," she announced.
pulling out the chair opposite me and sitting down without being invited. And you look like you have a story that's far more interesting than my son Julian's latest business venture. Why don't you come join us? We have an extra seat, and we're significantly more fun than this wall you're staring at. This was my moment. This was the change.
I am so sorry, I choked out, furiously wiping my ruined makeup with a rough paper napkin. It's just terrible seasonal allergies. The elegant woman, who I later learned was named Beatrice, raised a perfectly sculpted silver eyebrow. Darling, allergies absolutely do not make a beautiful young woman sob into a cloth napkin on Christmas Eve. Her voice held the commanding yet gentle authority of someone who had seen every tragedy in the world and fixed most of them. I let out a broken, pathetic laugh. Is it really that obvious? Beatrice smiled warmly, extending a hand dripping with massive diamonds. I am Beatrice Sterling, and absolutely nobody is going to eat completely alone while I am in the room. Come join our table. We have enough food to feed a small army and better wine than this. I panicked, shaking my head. Oh no, I could never. Before my anxious brain could even process what was happening, I was being firmly guided toward their massive, joyous table. A chair magically appeared, and a handsome guy with piercing green eyes, the one who had been cracking jokes earlier, slid over to make room. I'm Julian, he whispered with a heart-stopping smirk, pouring me a massive glass of expensive red wine. Brace yourself, my father is about to tell the worst dad joke of the century. Right on cue, Thomas, a distinguished man with silver hair, raised his glass. To our gorgeous, unexpected guest, who finally saved us from Julian's terrible stories. The entire table erupted into genuine roaring laughter, and for the absolute first time in 27 years, I actually laughed with them. There was no judgment here, no walking on eggshells, just pure, unadulterated warmth. As the decadent chocolate desserts were cleared away and the loud family debates over sports escalated, Beatrice smoothly slid into the empty chair right beside mine. So, Clara, she murmured, her sharp gaze pinning me down with a look that saw right through my defensive walls. Do you want to tell me the real reason you were sopping alone by the kitchen doors on the most family-oriented night of the year? I hesitated, the toxic shame burning my throat like acid. But something about her intense, non-judgmental eyes pulled the bitter truth right out of me. I confessed everything. The brutal phone call, my sister Harper's ridiculous engagement demands, my mother's cruel rejection, and my father's pathetic cowardice silence. Beatrice simply nodded slowly, her expression hardening into absolute steel. Let me tell you a secret, Clara. I'm a lawyer.
In my 30 years of ruthlessly tearing apart toxic households in court, Beatrice declared, her voice ringing with absolute certainty, I have learned one undeniable fact. The people who constantly accuse you of causing drama are almost always the ones orchestrating the abuse. They just desperately need a convenient scapegoat to mask their own failures. Those explosive words hit me like a speeding freight train. You are not the problem, Clara. You never were. I completely stopped breathing. It was the exact validation I had been starved of my entire life. Hey, if you are listening to this right now and someone's words have ever healed a deep wound in your soul, smash that like button. Tell me in the comments who your biggest supporter is. Stick around because the brutal revenge I exacted on my biological family is approaching fast. Don't miss it.
When the massive leather checkbook finally arrived at the end of the night, I scrambled to pull out my credit card, but Thomas swiftly intercepted it with a warm, grandfatherly chuckle. Absolutely not, Clara. Paying for new friends is an ancient Christmas tradition in this family. As we all gathered our heavy winter coats near the grand entrance, Beatrice smoothly pressed a thick, cream-coloured business card into my trembling palm. Beatrice Sterling, J.D., Elite Family Law. Below it was a private number and an address in Seattle's wealthiest neighbourhood. If you ever need to escape the darkness, call me, she demanded softly.
Julian materialized right beside me, buttoning his sleek overcoat. "She means it, Clara. We do a massive family brunch every single Sunday. You better be there or I will personally track you down." I was utterly speechless and glowing. I did not go to the Sterling estate the next week, terrifyingly convinced it was just a pity invite. But Beatrice relentlessly called to check on me. By February, I finally caved and knocked on the door of their breathtaking Victorian mansion. That terrifying first step changed my entire destiny. Over the next 8 months, I became a permanent fixture at their Sunday brunches. Thomas patiently taught me how to play aggressive chess, while Beatrice shared her highly classified recipes. But the most shocking development was Julian. We morphed from awkward strangers into inseparable best friends, and then into something dangerously electric. We texted at 2 a.m., debated fiercely over coffee, and his green eyes tracked me constantly. Meanwhile, my biological family maintained a sickening absolute silence. Not a single text message or call. I was dead to them.
For the first time in my miserable existence, the deafening silence from my toxic mother and cowardly father didn't destroy me. I violently ripped off the suffocating mask I had worn for 27 years. I stopped aggressively shrinking my personality to make other people comfortable. I laughed loudly, I argued passionately, and I let myself be entirely consumed by this newfound love. Julian and I officially started dating that spring, and the romance was an absolute whirlwind of luxurious dates, stolen kisses, and a fierce protective devotion I had never experienced. He treated me like an absolute queen, constantly proving that I was his ultimate priority. The deep, festering wounds inflicted by my biological sister Harper started to heal, replaced by the unbreakable loyalty of a family that actually chose to love me for exactly who I was. Life was perfect.
One humid August evening, Beatrice and I were sipping iced tea on her massive wraparound porch. "Have those miserable parents of yours attempted contact yet?" she asked sharply. "No," I sighed, looking at the glowing sunset. "And honestly, I am entirely done waiting for a fake apology." Beatrice smiled, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous, brilliant legal mind. "You know, Clara, the law is a fascinating weapon. It actively recognizes that true family can be deliberately created, not just unfortunately inherited. There are permanent, aggressive legal avenues to completely sever ties with your past and officially establish new bloodlines if an adult wishes to do so." I stared at her, my mind spinning violently at the explosive implication. I didn't fully grasp the monumental magnificence of her words yet, but I would very soon. My name was about to change forever. Exactly 2 years after that miserable, freezing Christmas Eve, Julian brought me right back to the emerald hearth. We sat in the exact same lavish mahogany booth where my life had completely restarted. "This feels incredibly poetic," I teased, sipping my champagne. Julian's hands were actually shaking. He reached across the candlelit table, his piercing green eyes intensely locked onto mine. "Clara, my family found you, but I am the one who gets to keep you forever. I want to spend the absolute rest of my natural life choosing you first, every single day." He dropped to one knee right in the middle of the crowded luxury restaurant, pulling out a breathtaking, massive diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" I sobbed hysterically, screaming a massive yes as the entire restaurant erupted into a deafening, thunderous applause. I was going to be a bride, a sterling bride.
Suddenly, Beatrice and Thomas emerged from a shadowy corner booth, popping a massive bottle of champagne. The wedding planning commenced immediately, but one toxic, agonizing detail kept me awake: the wedding invitations. Who would I list as my parents? Beatrice sat me down and dropped the ultimate nuclear bomb.
Adult adoption, Clara. We want to formally, legally adopt you. A brand new birth certificate, officially erasing your toxic parents from the legal record forever. I wept in her arms, agreeing instantly. I legally became Clara Sterling. We proudly printed Parents of the Bride, Thomas and Beatrice Sterling, on hundreds of luxurious invitations. But just 3 months before the wedding, my phone violently buzzed. It was a vicious, furious text from my biological mother. The toxic monsters had finally discovered my secret. Stay tuned for part 3.
My biological mother, Brenda, didn't just call, she practically detonated my phone with 42 missed calls in a single hour. When I finally answered, her voice was a shrill, piercing siren of pure, unadulterated entitlement. "Clara Sterling, what kind of sick, twisted joke is this? I saw a photo of your wedding invitation on some distant cousin's Instagram. Who the hell are Thomas and Beatrice Sterling, and why are they listed as the parents of the bride? We are your parents, you ungrateful, pathetic little brat. You cannot just rewrite history because you're throwing some fancy tantrum." I sat in my office, staring out at the Seattle skyline, feeling surprisingly calm. The woman who had banned me from Christmas for a better aesthetic was now losing her mind over a piece of high-quality stationery. The irony was absolutely delicious.
She didn't wait for me to speak. We raised you. We fed you for 27 years, and this is how you repay us, by shaming us in front of the entire family. Brenda was crying now, those loud, performative sobs she used whenever she wasn't the center of attention. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is for me to have people asking why my daughter is being walked down the aisle by strangers? Your father is devastated, Clara. He's been in his room all day, refusing to eat. I knew that was a blatant lie. My father was likely on the couch, drinking a beer and ignoring the chaos like he always did. "Brenda," I said, using her first name for the very first time. The silence on the other end was sudden and deafening. "You told me not to come home. You told me I wasn't family. I simply took your advice to heart, so leave me alone." I took a deep breath, the cold steel of my new reality hardening my voice. "I didn't just change my name for the wedding, Brenda. Washington. And in every way that actually matters, you and Dad are nothing but strangers to me now. My birth certificate has been amended. Your names are gone. You wanted me out of the holiday photos? Well, you've been cropped out of my entire life." I could hear her gasping for air, the sound of her world crumbling under the weight of her cruelty. "You can't do that," she shrieked, her voice cracking with a mixture of rage and genuine fear. "You're our blood. You belong to us." But I didn't belong to them. I never did. I was just a ghost in their house, and now I am finally free. Then came Harper. My perfect sister called me 10 minutes later, but her tone wasn't angry, it was calculated. "Clara, listen, Mom is hysterical, but let's be adults here. I looked up the Sterlings. They're worth hundreds of millions, aren't they? Is that why you did this? To get your hands on that Seattle tech money?" I rolled my eyes so hard it actually hurt. Harper was always obsessed with status, which is why she had ditched me for her wealthy fiancé's family in the first place. It's not about the money, Harper. It's about the fact that they actually like me. They know my favorite color, my career goals, and they don't think my existence is an inconvenience. Harper laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Don't be naive. Nobody does something for nothing. They're using you for some weird tax break or social points. Come back home and stop this."
Before I tell you about the insane stunt they pulled to try and crash my bridal shower, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are getting into the real heat of the story now, and you don't want to miss the wedding finale in part 4. Comment down below with the word revenge if you think I was absolutely right to legally erase my toxic parents from my entire life. Anyway, the calls didn't stop. They started sending me old photos of us, me as a toddler, me at 5, trying to trigger some dormant sense of loyalty.
When that didn't work, they did something truly desperate. They drove 18 hours from their quiet suburban town straight to my luxury apartment building in Seattle. I came home from work to find Brenda and my father standing right by the main security gate, looking disheveled and incredibly frantic.
My father stepped forward, his eyes watery, trying to play the role of the grieving patriarch. "Clara, honey, we've made mistakes. We were stressed with Harper's wedding, and we said things we didn't mean. But this adoption thing is extreme. It's a slap in the face to your heritage." I stood my ground, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my voice remained ice cold. "A slap in the face? You left me alone on Christmas Eve. You told me I ruined the aesthetic. You didn't check on me for years. You didn't care about my heritage when you were erasing me from the family stockings." Brenda tried to grab my arm, her manicured nails digging into my coat. "We're here to take you home, Clara. We'll fix this. We'll tell everyone the invitations were just a mistake, a typo." They still didn't get it. They thought I was just a naive child.
Suddenly, a sleek black luxury SUV pulled up to the curb. Beatrice stepped out, looking every bit like the high-powered attorney she was. She didn't even have to say a word. Her presence alone shifted the entire atmosphere. She walked straight over to us, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. "Is there a problem here, Clara?" she asked, her voice dripping with a dangerous, sophisticated edge. My biological parents froze. They looked at her expensive suit, the sheer power radiating off her, and they looked like small, insignificant insects. "We are her parents," Brenda stammered, trying to regain her footing. Beatrice let out a short, sharp laugh that echoed through the lobby. "No, you are the people who abandoned a vulnerable woman. I am her mother, and if you don't step away from my daughter right now, I will have you arrested."
My father tried to puff out his chest. "You can't threaten us. We have rights." Beatrice smiled, a predatory expression that made even me feel a little bit bad for them. Actually, as a retired family law specialist who still sits on several prestigious boards, I can assure you that you have 0 rights. You are currently trespassing on private property after being told to leave. I have a copy of the finalized adoption papers in my office, signed by a judge who happens to be a very close friend of mine. Clara is a sterling now. If you contact her again, I will bury you in so much litigation that you won't be able to afford a stick of gum, let alone a lawyer to defend yourselves. The look of pure, unadulterated terror on Brenda's face was the best Christmas present I had ever received. They backed away, defeated, small, and utterly broken.
They left, but I knew they weren't entirely done. Toxic people like them don't just vanish into thin air. They patiently wait for a much bigger stage. A week later, I received an email from my father. It was surprisingly humble, or so it cleverly seemed. He begged for just 4 seats at the wedding. He said they didn't want to cause a massive scene. They just wanted to watch their only other daughter get married. He even suggested they sit in the very back row, like random spectators. Julian was absolutely furious. "They don't deserve to be in the exact same zip code as you on our wedding day," he growled. But Beatrice had a different, brilliant idea. She had a glint in her eye that told me she was planning something legendary. "Let them come," she whispered, a wicked smile playing on her lips. "But they won't be guests, Clara. They'll be a lesson."
The final month leading up to the massive wedding was an absolute blur of imported silk, white roses, and top-secret planning. I felt a strange mix of anxiety and a cold, calculating excitement. I was finally going to show them exactly what it felt like to be the complete outsider. I was going to show them exactly what they had so carelessly thrown away. My biological parents sent one last text the night before the huge ceremony. "We'll be there, Clara. We're so incredibly glad you came to your senses. We can't wait to be a family again." I didn't even bother to reply. I just looked at my reflection in my stunning custom gown, the one Beatrice had helped me design. Tomorrow, the whole world, and especially Brenda and Harper, would see the true power of a family built on choice rather than chance. They were walking straight into a gorgeous, beautiful trap. The morning of the wedding was a crystalline, perfect Seattle day. The venue was a breathtaking glass cathedral perched on a cliff overlooking the dark, swirling waters of the Puget Sound. I stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by my real bridesmaids, while Beatrice adjusted my cathedral-length lace veil with tears of genuine pride in her eyes. "You are the most beautiful Sterling I have ever seen," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see the broken, unwanted girl from 5 years ago. I saw a woman who was fiercely loved, completely protected, and ready to close the darkest chapter of her life forever. Outside, the guests were arriving, including the 3 people who had spent decades trying to extinguish my light. They had no idea they were walking into a legal and social ambush.
Brenda, Harper, and my father arrived at the venue wearing their most expensive outfits, clearly ready to play the role of the long-lost, loving family for the high society guests. They walked up to the grand entrance with their heads held high, expecting to be escorted to the front row, but Beatrice's security team, massive men in impeccably tailored black suits, stopped them dead in their tracks. "Names?" one of them asked, his voice like grinding gravel. My father puffed out his chest. "I'm the father of the bride. This is the mother and sister." The guard didn't even blink. He looked down at a special list on his clipboard. "Ah, yes, you're on the spectator-only list. Please follow the secondary path to the overflow seating area." Brenda's jaw dropped in absolute shock. "Overflow? We're family." The guard simply gestured towards a side door.
They were led not to the front, nor even to the back of the main chapel, but to a small, isolated balcony specifically designated for non-family observers. From there, they could see everything, but they were physically separated from the celebration by a thick glass partition. They were essentially in a fishbowl. They watched as the Sterling family, uncles, aunts, and cousins, filled the front rows, laughing and hugging. If you are enjoying this ultimate moment of karma, please hit that subscribe button right now. We are almost at the finish line. Comment karma below if you think the balcony was a stroke of absolute genius. Brenda looked like she was about to explode with rage, but the presence of the security guards kept her totally silent. They were finally exactly where they had put me for 27 years, on the outside, looking in.
The music shifted to a deep, resonant cello melody that echoed through the glass walls. The huge doors swung open, and the entire room stood up. I stepped out, clutching Thomas's arm. He looked at me with such fierce, fatherly devotion that it nearly took my breath away. As we walked down the aisle, I didn't look at the guests. I looked straight ahead at Julian, who was standing at the altar with tears streaming down his face. But as we passed under the balcony, I couldn't help but steal one quick glance upward. My biological parents were pressed against the thick glass, their faces pale and distorted. They saw the way Thomas proudly held my hand. They saw the way the Sterling family looked at me with adoration. For the absolute first time, the reality of what they had lost hit them with the force of a tidal wave. I felt zero pity. I was free.
The ceremony began with the officiant speaking about the monumental power of intentional love. "We are here today to celebrate a union of souls, but also a union of families," he proclaimed. Clara Sterling was not born into this family by chance, but she was brought into it by a choice that was sanctioned by love and finalized by law. He then asked the traditional, highly anticipated question, who gifts this woman to be married? Thomas stood tall, his voice booming through the cathedral. On behalf of the Sterling family, her mother Beatrice and I do. Up in the balcony, Brenda let out a muffled sob that was quickly silenced by a strict guard. Every single person in that room knew exactly what had happened. The adult adoption wasn't a secret. It was a celebration of my survival. I was no longer a victim. I was a daughter by beautiful design. After the vows were exchanged and Julian kissed me with a passion that made the whole room cheer, we headed to the grand ballroom for the reception. I had instructed the staff that my biological family could attend the dinner, but they were seated at a table in the very back, officially labeled general guests. They sat there in agonizing silence while the Sterling family gave speech after speech about my strength, my kindness, and how I had completely fulfilled their lives. Harper looked like she desperately wanted to crawl under the table. Her wealthy fiancé was looking around the room, realizing he was a very small fish in a very large elite pond. Every time my mother tried to catch my eye, I looked right through her, as if she were made of thin air. She was a ghost, a faded memory of a terrified girl I used to be. I was completely untouchable.
Then came the absolute climax of the evening, the bride's speech. I took the microphone, the massive room falling into a respectful hush. I looked directly at the back table. 5 years ago, I began, my voice steady and crystal clear. I was told that I ruined the aesthetic of a family holiday. I was told that I didn't matter. I spent that Christmas totally alone in a restaurant, thinking my life was over. I paused, letting the heavy weight of those words settle over the room. But that night, I learned that some people are just placeholders in your life. They share your DNA, but they don't share your heart. To Thomas and Beatrice, thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for making me a Sterling. And to those who threw me away, thank you for the brutal rejection. It was the greatest gift I ever received. You set me completely free.
The room erupted into a deafening standing ovation. As the music started and people hit the dance floor, my biological father tried to intercept me near the grand bar. "Clara, please," he whispered, his voice shaking terribly. "We're leaving. It was way too much. We get it now. We're so incredibly sorry." I looked at the pathetic man who had stayed completely silent while I was being emotionally slaughtered for 27 years. "Are you genuinely sorry for what you did, or are you just sorry that everyone here saw you do it?" I asked him plainly. He couldn't answer. He just looked down at his expensive shoes in utter shame. "You have a truly beautiful life, Clara," he finally muttered. "I do," I replied softly, catching Julian's loving eye across the room. "And the best part is, you don't have to worry about me ruining it. Goodbye, Dad."
Security quietly escorted them to the valet stand before the 5-tier cake was even cut. They were gone, vanished into the crisp Seattle night like a bad dream rapidly fading at sunrise. I spent the rest of the night dancing, laughing, and feeling the massive weight of the world finally lift off my weary shoulders. I wasn't the dramatic daughter or the depressing single girl anymore. I was a beloved wife, a cherished daughter, and a powerful woman who finally knew her own worth. If you have ever felt like you had to fight for a seat at a table where you weren't welcome, I hope my story gives you the immense strength to build your own table. Don't waste 27 years of your life like I did. The world is full of people waiting to love the real you. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who desperately needs a reminder today.
As Julian and I drove away in a shower of brilliant sparklers and loud cheers, I looked at the massive new wedding ring sparkling on my finger. It was a beautiful symbol of a permanent promise kept, not just to my wonderful husband, but to myself. My name is Clara Sterling, and I am living proof that you can absolutely choose your own happy ending.
you can boldly rewrite your history. You can take the agonizing pain of rejection and quickly turn it into the unshakable foundation of a brand new, beautiful life. My biological family is now just a tiny, insignificant footnote in a much bigger, much happier story. I found my people, and I promise you, they are out there for you too. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all 4 parts of this wild journey. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story of justice and healing. Bye for now.